Hello, my name is Giovanni Harris, and today I will be talking to you about the social determinants of Douglasville and the city in general and how that affects its individuals, communities, and the aspects that I learned throughout the semester and how that applies to the city. The main reason I chose the city is mostly due to my background. I lived most of my life within Douglasville and around in Douglas County. I've only moved twice within the county itself, but I have a good general idea and familiarity with Douglasville itself. So seeing and being able to apply these social and health aspects to something that I'm familiar with and something that I know just makes it more interesting compared to maybe a city that I've never been to, and it makes it more engaging. So that's the reason I chose this city. So for the demographics, which is the next slide, the demographics is presented here, and our total population is around 35,000 individuals within the community. And the gender split for that would be around a 50-50 mark, but more on the female side with 52%, and males being 48% of the majority. So with the racial split, there is around 65%, and then black individuals, and then for white individuals it's around 25%. For Hispanics it's around 6.3, and then 3% for others or mixed races. And I know for my papers I put different numbers, which I think during that I was seeing more of just Douglas County in general, which might give a different aspect or different sway in the statistics in terms of which percentages there are. And that does make sense. So I decided to make it more keen or more sharp on the smaller part of Douglasville, just the city itself. And then the median age is 36 years old, which can tell a lot through the stats, or it can tell a little by the median age being like right in the middle. It might raise or lower your longevity for your community, depending on what your median age is, your average age. Um, so yeah. So for income and poverty, the median household income for one individual specifically is what I went off of here is 58,000 a year. And for that, the Georgia average is actually 68,000. So here we can see that the median household is just a little bit 10K under what the state average is, and around 20K from the US average, which is definitely a shorter amount than the other two averages, which goes to explain the poverty rate, which is 20.8%, which is higher than both state and national averages, um, which again shows a lot. And that actually might be from maybe social obstacles. It might be from any other things, from racial disparities, or even just the other aspects that we're going to get into further into the PowerPoint. Alrighty, so next on we have healthcare. So for healthcare, there are plenty of options that I know of from my lifetime or that I might be familiar with. But the more popular ones would be definitely Wellstar Douglas Hospital. It is emphasized going down I-20, which we will touch upon later in the presentation, but it is emphasized that that is an option for hospital care and wealth care. And it is a pretty huge facility. Right now, I'm also a PT8, and I've been there to get my identification with through Wellstar, and it's pretty nice. There's the Mercer Care Clinic, which is there, and then there's also small like urgent care options that are around. And speaking of physical therapy, I just wanted to throw in that there are also other healthcare options instead of like just huge hospitals. There are like physical therapy clinics or other PTs around, OTs that apply the healthcare options as well. And then again, there's Douglas County Health Department that allows for people who might not have those resources in order to access that. So next, the education. Um, there are there are 26 public schools within the county, um, and there is a graduation rate of 88% of those students through high school, um, which is very interesting to see, especially growing up within the community. Not really knowing that there's actually that many those there are that many schools with multiple options. Um, but now that it's put into perspective, it definitely makes a lot of sense. And then in terms of higher education after high school, you have the option to go to various amounts of colleges. The three that I put on here is the Georgia Highlands College campus, which is within the Douglasville area. Then you also have the UWG options, which are pretty nice, if you were to ask me. You have the UWG options, which you have a few campuses that are actually really close by. The Douglasville campus, which is within Douglas County, and then you also have the Carrollton and Noonan campuses, which is under an hour away. Then there's also GSU again, which is under an hour away, and more deeper into Atlanta. There are other options like KSU and Marietta, or maybe like Georgia Southern that other individuals might take in consideration, but those are a little further away. Might take more resources to access those. And in terms of the higher graduation rates, the high school graduate is, again, I found maybe a different stat here, but it's around that 80% mark, high 80% mark. And in terms of like the bachelor's degree, it's 22% of students that, or civilians that ended up getting their bachelor's, which could say a lot in terms of income as well, as the income is lower on the lower side of the averages, which if there's less than half individuals with their bachelor's degree, they might make less. So in terms of transportation, we have many major roads, or a few that are listed here is I-20, like I said earlier, which is from I-20 you can see the that various health options that are within the county or the city of Douglasville. Then we have Highway 5, which runs through Douglasville actually, and it allows for you to go down Highway 5 and meet other roads like State Route 166, which could take you to UWG or parts of Carrollton, or even just the opposite way towards Atlanta. And then there's Highway 92 again for goods and stuff, and then Veterans Memorial Highway, which another highway that actually runs along downtown Douglasville, but can take you way further into deeper other parts of Georgia, in terms of that highway just extending a really long point and way. So for public transit options, there really aren't many, especially from experience. I know of some cases where people might not be able to get to places, or they might not have access to certain things due to them not having that transportation. And luckily with Uber and Lyft, that makes it a little more easier. But even then, sometimes that might not be the best option, as those can be expensive. There is a Douglas County Connect system or transit busway, but that is again limiting and restrictions with there's a schedule. So you might have to wait for the bus, or you might have to do other things in order to get to the bus itself. And in terms of, I guess, biking and walking, which we will talk about later, is also not the best option. In terms of the housing opportunities for home ownership, there's a home ownership rate of 54% with the median home value of $243,000. The rental rate is 46%, and which definitely says a lot. The with the home values being up on the higher end, in my opinion, but the average yearly income not being that much, which can result into more stress related environments. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, I need to pay off this rent or pay for a new house, but you don't make as much, which can lead to those uh, mental, physical, and social wellness just hitting the dip. It's not that well. Which again, from this note here, the challenges include the raising house costs, especially with the area. being known to gain a lot of popularity right outside the area of Atlanta. Those prices are going to grow. But with that, there's more demand and there's less supply. So there's not as many housing areas, which you might have to take an apartment, which could be just as expensive, depending on what you're doing. And again, that leads to more health, mental, and physical health problems due to that. For the crime rates, the overall crime rate is 25 per 1,000 residents, which is lower than the national rate. And then there's also around three violent crimes per 1,000 residents, which the national rate is higher at 4% or 4 per 1,000 residents. And which is very interesting because I know within my background in my past, I've heard and experienced of certain places, being robbed or certain things, which could again lead to more stressful situations. Um, but there are also like other anecdotal stories I heard that there's like Douglasville might have the highest murder rate within Georgia, which can definitely show different things throughout the stats. But in terms of social determinants, like in the health of the community, um, it can put a lot of stress on certain individuals, especially knowing that if you don't make enough, you might not have enough money to pay for security systems, or you might be in an obstacle where there's racial obstacles maybe. As some individuals, if you're considered black, then you might not get as much assistance, um, and just other various things. Next, the life expectancy. So, like we said, with that median age, your life expectancy can change depending on the stats of that. And for Douglasville, the estimated is around 77 and a half. And then which is pretty good, knowing that the state average is 77 years and the national or U.S. average is around 78 years. Um, and again, from all the stuff earlier, the factors that might influence that is your income, housing, your health care, and the transportation options. I know for Douglasville, all of that might be on the lower side and on the more poverty side, depending on who you are and what your background is. So that will drop our longevity. Um, but in terms of the stats, it's not too far off from the U.S. national average, which is seems pretty good. So for the walkability score for Douglasville area, I redid my score page. I don't have the stuff here because I didn't take it down. I apologize, but the score was relatively low um, compared to the presentation or the project that I did on Carrollton. Um, there are sidewalks in main areas like downtown Douglasville, which I have a picture in the next slide, but there are not many sidewalks in terms of like anything past that. The sidewalks are mostly broken, have damage. There's not that many ramps for handicap accessibility or even just biking. Sidewalks tend to disappear in random areas. Yeah, it's just not the best for pedestrians to be walking on. It is pretty clean and safe, but I mean, in terms of like having a buffer in the area, it's not the greatest. Which then comes the problem of transportation, where if you do have to come up to the experience of having to walk somewhere, then you don't really have that option. Knowing that, then cars will be the main option, which again could lead to those health problems of you having to use a car constantly to transport instead of getting daily exercise like walking or biking. And then that runs into the problem of if you're in a car, then you might run into the fast food dilemma where you're like, oh, I'm in my car, I could just go get some fast food, which then again affects the health and your physical and mental health overall, um, which is very interesting to see. And I'm also learning that through my life now, where I'm thinking to myself, well, in order to get to my job, I have to drive instead of walking or biking, which I much prefer. So yeah, just something that's interesting there. And this is the picture of downtown Douglasville that I was talking about. You can see there's a lot of sidewalks and good buffer area in the ramps, and it's good for biking. But in other spots, it's not so much. In terms of conclusion and reflection, it's very interesting from all the things from transportation to the health options to uh, the crime rates and maybe even like neighborhood communities to see what I have seen and what I haven't seen, if that makes sense. Um, some of this stuff came new to me and I never really thought about it. And other things I'm experiencing now, again, with the um, lack of transportation options, and then other things I still haven't seen but never really came into mind, especially now might be going into my career soon and might be trying to find new options, and the whole idea of like having a house and having a lower income per year is not really come to my mind as often as it would somebody who is in that situation or predicament. So and I never really thought of Douglasville being more on the poverty side, um, or poverty side, which was very interesting. But in terms of like reflection, I do recognize that I am blessed with opportunities that I have been filled with. And yeah, it's just very interesting. But overall, this unit and this semester was very, very eye-opening to new experiences. And yeah, that's it. These are my references, and thank you.